We are back with another episode of the 6 Yard Line podcast, transfer episode. This is what, show number 3, Noel?
Yeah, I think it's number 3 already. We're still working our way through, but it's slowed down, like really slowed down. Yeah, the predictions. It's stopping us from doing the predictions, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't know if you saw the supercomputer predictions this week. But the Premier League super predictor had some absolutely wild takes on there. I'll post a short on it this week. It had Manchester United 5th, had Man City winning the title, and Forest finishing 17th with Bournemouth just above them. And then it's a good segue into one of the teams that actually both the teams that we're going to talk about tonight, Everton and West Ham, are, according to the supercomputer, going to finish 9th and 10th. Okay, so I think we should talk about another team that I do also worry about is West Ham. And, I think so far, if you look at West Ham's signings, they brought Callum Wilson on a free from Newcastle. He's unusual. We'll talk about his contract in a second. It's a pay-as-you-play kind of deal. They brought in Kyle Walker-Peters, who I generally think that was a really good signing for West Ham. And then they brought in El Hadj Malik Diouf from Slavia Prague. And they confirmed the Todibo signing. He was on loan last year, I think. And then so they just confirmed that signing. So that's the imports of players this window. What do you make of West Ham? Because, we've got Graham Potter in charge. This is his first proper, well, he had the January window, but this is his first summer window with West Ham. And the jury's a little bit out on him still, right? And, the way I looked at West Ham is if anything happens to, what's his name?
Bowen,
thank you. Jared Bowen. If something happens to Jared Bowen, I do generally worry about West Ham.
They're done. I don't know what direction Graham Potter's trying to go with this team. Clearly, he wants to go. There's a lot of players from last year that he felt just weren't, his type of players. So he's trying to make some changes. But again, this team struggled last year, right? You're not talking about a team that was, had a decent season. They struggled. They were, had to kind of kick it into gear near the, just to make sure they weren't in that relegation fight. But I don't see them getting this is similar to Everton. They've probably had a little better window when it comes to the players that they've been able to bring in. But at the same time, I don't know if those players are enough to keep them out of that relegation battle again this season.
Yeah, because
it's not a knock on West. There's so many other areas that I'm not confident. The defense, their keeper, like you said, Bowen is great, but you can't expect him to always be the savior game in, game out. You need more depth. You need more, more options on the attacking front, and they don't have that. So I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, because the elephant in the room is the best player I felt last year was Kudus last year, and they just sold him to Spurs. And I don't understand why. I get Kudus wanted to leave. I get that, but I don't think the deal was that great. I thought, I generally thought they would get more money for him because I thought Kudus was very good at times. And now he's playing across the street at Tottenham, and there's no real replacement for him. Callum Wilson, as we said, he's on a pay-as-you-play deal for 1 year because he is injury prone. He is, reaching that point in his career. He's not a spring chicken anymore. So again, is he going to be your goals? Like, you let Kufal leave, he's gone, Kudus is gone. I just think there's a lot of players in that team. They're obviously trying to find a goalkeeper. They don't believe in the Spanish goalkeeper anymore. They let the other one, Fabianski, leave. So you've got a lot of questions. And if Graham Potter's not up to it, he might need Harry Potter to come and rescue him, because at the end of the day, I don't generally think they have got enough, certainly not to end up in 10th in the Premier League at this point in time. When I look at teams, I rather predict Brentford or Brighton above West Ham at this point. I just don't know where the goals are going to come from. Like Everton, it's who's going to score you the goals. Maybe they can defensively hold it, but that's not Potter's style. So I just feel that they need to really get something going, but you don't even see them linked to a lot of players. You don't see any big names linked to them. And I think there is players out there that would go to a team like West Ham, but I just don't see what they're trying to do. And that's where my concern is with them.
You have to think that some teams just aren't an attractive option for a lot of players, right? Like, unfortunately, you're like playing in Europe for most players, not all, but playing in Europe for a lot of players, if they still have that need or that desire, that will always be, and they'll go to a different league outside of England to play there. Right. And that's part of the problem is that like a team like West Ham, a team like, what do you have to offer if you're a team like West Ham, if you're a team like Everton? Like if you're trying to sell the project, the plan, right? Players know where they can look at where Everton has been for the past 3-4 years. Where a team like West Ham is a different story because West Ham has just had a big fall off from when they were in Europe, right? And that's, maybe people see the writing on the wall and just see that like these aren't teams that are going to be competing in that upper echelon of the Premier League in the next few years. And
I don't know. I do think there's a lot of players in a lot of countries that obviously the Premier League is, like a Kudus. And I think this is the point. You've got to kind of go and get those. You kind of got to go and pick off players from the leagues like the Eredivisie. You've got to go and pick off players from the Bundesliga, and you've got to pick off players that are in those kind of leagues where, they get a move to, yes, it's West Ham, yes, it's an Everton, but then you could get that move to Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, because if you play well, that's what you kind of got to do. And you kind of look at, there is some teams doing this, knowing that, yes, hey, we're gonna do this way, we're gonna sell this person, and we're gonna flip this person. Like Brighton's been doing it. They've been mugging Chelsea off for like $500 million. So, at the end of the day, it's a formula, but West Ham needs to get on that program of that formula.
And
I just don't see it happening right now.
That's the thing is, right? Like a team like Brighton is a prime example of their scouting network, being able to find the diamonds in the rough, not necessarily going in the big name leagues, finding, those players that are playing in obscure leagues that are young and they just wanted to get an opportunity to play in Europe. So they'll play in a, not one of the so-called big leagues, but, they have the skill, they have the ability. So you're right. West Ham and Everton need to go after those young players. But the problem is again, do they have the right scouting network? Do they have the right leadership that sees that's the way to build for the future, right? Because you're right. If you can find those studs, those young studs, big clubs will come calling, and you will at least be able to recoup or make profit off of these players. But you have to be wise with regard to finding those players. And maybe they are working on things, and that's why because they're not big names, we're not hearing things. And these are the deals that'll happen in the next week or so. But as a fan of the teams, you have to be worried.
Yeah, well, one name that they are linked with today is Raheem Sterling. Obviously, Chelsea's looking just for 20 million to unload Raheem Sterling. I think that's more because they're going to have to pay him off. And then, Sterling played for Potter at Chelsea, obviously, right? And he did have a good relationship with him. So I don't think it's a bad move for them. And then he's a threat if it depends on how motivated he is these days, right? Like you just saw him at Arsenal last year. He had a great chance to kind of make it in an Arsenal team when Saka was injured and stuff like that. And he just never materialized. And, again, You've got to ask does he have the fight left in him? He's been around a lot of clubs now. And, I look at Raheem Sterling like, he's probably heading towards an MLS Saudi team just for one last payday. But West Ham heavily linked with him, and it would make sense.
Well, I mean, I've said it already. Teams like team like Chelsea, a team like Man United have players that maybe they just need to get out of the big club environment and they can succeed, right? I don't know.
What? I would agree with you on that. I would say Jadon Sancho going to a team like West Ham might be a good move for him, right? Maybe that he can rediscover his form, find how it goes. There's players there. Even Alejandro Garnacho, he's 40 million is what United is asking for him. He doesn't earn huge amounts of money. They are upgrades on what they've got.
But hold on, isn't Garnacho linked to Chelsea?
Everyone's linked to Chelsea. That's like saying, it's raining outside. It's and water is wet. Everyone's linked to Chelsea. So I just think there is players that you can go and get, and maybe you find a couple of forgotten stars, because that's been a formula for a lot of the teams. You take somebody that didn't live up to the expectations somewhere, and you go and try and rebuild them and get something out of them, right? It's not rocket science. It's really good football management. You'd find those guys like Grealish that you've had a bad year and you think you can turn them around.
Are you surprised neither of these teams have called on a player like Jamie Vardy?
I'm surprised Everton hasn't, because one thing David Moyes teams are workers, and Vardy is a worker. We hear a lot more rumors that he's more geared on getting one last payday in the US, and obviously has some investments out here as well. So again, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised that why West Ham's not in for Calvert-Lewin, because he looks like a West Ham player to me. His injury record's not great, but even Leeds United have been linked with Calvert-Lewin today, and I think that makes sense to go and get a veteran player. And I think there's a player that needs a new home, needs a fresh start, and if you can get him staying healthy and fit, he can score you some goals that keeps you in the Premier League.
Yep.
I don't understand why they're not going for that. It's not like they're gonna break the bank for you, right?
As usual, hit that like button, subscribe, 6 Yard Line Podcast. We'll be coming with our season predictions the season starts a week this Friday, so we're going to have to get that show recorded next week sometime. So we'll work on that in the next little bit and get that out there for you folks. That's it for me. Noel, have a good one.
All right, man. Thanks. Talk soon.
All right. Talk to you later. Peace out, everyone.